amended.
A Butler County family is speaking out after their loved one was killed in what police are calling an act of road rage. 74-year-old Alton Algrim died from his injuries after being attacked at an El Dorado convenience store this month. Police arrested Ashton McCoy. He was originally charged with aggravated battery, but following Algrim's death, he is now charged with first-degree murder.
Yes, sir.
This is State of Kansas versus Ashton Jay McCoy. It's case number 2023 CR 487. Mr. McCoy appears from a secured location at the Judicial Center. Cheryl Pierce appears for the office of the Butler County and the state of Kansas. Chris Payne appears as defense counsel. This matter comes before the court at this time, essentially on a preliminary hearing control docket. Mr. Payton was recently appointed by the court, as I believe that Mr. McCoy had earlier represented at first appearance that he was going to be retained as new counsel. Yet upon review of the file, it did not appear that any counsel had entered their appearance. Mr. McCoy, have you indeed hired a lawyer?
No, I was trying to find an attorney, but the lowest attorney that told me wanted $50,000 up front, and I couldn't come up with that. I tried calling James Watts's office and never returned a call.
All right, well, Mr. Watts had declared to this court upon appointment that he had a conflict in this case and would not be able to serve as appointed counsel, so I don't think he would have been able to serve as retained counsel either. Chris Payne, an experienced attorney, has been appointed to represent you, Mr. McCoy. One matter that will need to be addressed today is scheduling of an evidentiary preliminary hearing in this case, which I would expect, Mr. Payne, that your client would be requesting.
We would, Your Honor, but I was going to request another PHC setting. I received discovery Friday, which I don't fault the county attorney's office. They turned that around pretty quick, but I am not anywhere close to being prepared for a preliminary hearing, Your Honor.
That request has been considered but denied, Mr. Payne. I'm going to go ahead and set an evidentiary date at this time. Counsel, I'm currently looking at the first week in January. This district is not scheduled to have any jury trials set that week. I think it's a good week to set an evidentiary prelim. In this case, I'd be first looking at Wednesday, January 3, counsel. Wednesday, January 3. Mr. Payne?
What time would that be at, Your Honor?
It would be starting at 9 o'clock in the morning.
I should be able to make that work.
All right, and I trust that'll work for you, Ms. Pierce.
Judge, if you're going to do that in the morning on January 3rd, I can do that, but I cannot do the afternoon.
Can you present your evidence in 3 hours?
I believe so.
Very well. Then I'll set evidentiary preliminary hearing in this case for Wednesday, January 3, 2024, beginning at 9 o'clock a.m. That is currently a 3-hour setting. Mr. McCoy must be present at that time. Counsel, I'm contemplating that this would be an in-person proceeding. Wednesday, January 3, 9 o'clock, courtroom B at the Butler County Judicial Center. Does appear that Mr. Payne is going to remain Mr. McCoy's counsel at the current time. The other matter to be addressed regarding Mr. McCoy is the state's request, which was documented by a written motion for this court to reconsider the bond in this particular case, currently set at $50,000 cash or professional surety, with a GPS monitoring requirement as set by Judge Satterfield at time of initial appearance in this case back on October the 10th. This is this court's first proceeding involving Mr. McCoy. Is the state still seeking for reconsideration of the bond in this case, Ms. Pierce?
Yes, Your Honor, I am. As I've noted in my motion, this bond was set based on what was then charged as an aggravated battery, a level 4 person felony. At that time, subsequent to that October 10th date, the victim, in fact, did pass away. We amended the information to include the murder in the first degree as well as the aggravated battery. The significant increase in penalties. This is an off-grid felony now. It is not a level 4. It is a presumptive life prison. As I noted at the initial bond request, there were several witnesses. It's on surveillance. The defendant's criminal history includes felonies, possession, drug charge. I believe he's at least a D on the grid. We did do some no contact orders as well with all of the endorsed witnesses. There was a EMT, an electronic monitoring order that was submitted and filed on October the 20th. One of those individuals included Leah Dawn Vines. We have information from EMD as well as law enforcement that in fact there's been at least one documented and perhaps 2 other subsequent contacts with this person. So I think that he's in violation of that no contact order as well, Your Honor.
All right, well, if the court's going to reconsider bond in this case, the court needs to consider all factors, Ms. Pierce. Let's review some of these. Again, this is this court's first proceeding involving this case. What is the state alleging happened here? What is the nature and circumstances of this alleged crime?
His Uncle Kent told him what happened.
Martha and Sue were coming over to get gas. They're out in the turn lane and this kid pulls in behind them, starts screaming and honking and hollering. I start to walk over to him and tell him, hey pal, there's no reason to talk that way.
Ashton Jay McCoy was arrested at the scene and later charged with aggravated battery. Kent went to the hospital to get checked out when things took a drastic turn. He underwent brain surgery, but his injuries were too severe.
The nature and circumstances of this crime, Your Honor, is this was an unprovoked attack by Mr. McCoy on a 74-year-old man at the Jump Start here in El Dorado, Kansas. He hit the victim in this case about the head 3 or 4 different times. And as I said, it was an unprovoked attack. Mr. Victim in this case hit the ground, hit his head, and he had significant brain trauma. He went to Wesley Hospital where he was admitted with significant brain trauma, and he expired on approximately October the 14th. He was unresponsive and did not ever maintain, or he passed away there in the hospital, Your Honor.
How old was this alleged victim when he passed away?
74.
You stated earlier that there were witnesses. I trust you mean eyewitnesses to this incident?
Yes, Your Honor. There were several people from the community that was there at the gas station that intervened that actually were blocking Mr. McCoy's ability to leave the gas station until law enforcement came. And as I said, the attack is on video, and we also have that surveillance as well, Your Honor.
What do you know about Mr. McCoy's local family ties or length of residence in the community, Ms. Pierce?
I don't really know a lot, Your Honor. I do believe that he indicated that he did have some family. I know he has some criminal history that comes out of Butler County locally. As far as employment, I know he told Judge Satterfield that he was employed at the first appearance, but I don't know that that's absolutely accurate. But as far as his contacts, I don't think that he indicated that he has a father that's somewhere local, but I don't think it's in Butler County. I do believe that he may have a sibling that's local.
All right.
And his girlfriend, of course.
Does the state have any records that there has been a history of failure to appear by this individual?
I do believe that I noted on his criminal history that there were a couple of failures to appear And I do believe that he was on some kind of probation at one time that resulted in some time in DOC for failure to complete his probation, Your Honor.
Was he on probation or parole at the time that this incident happened?
No, Your Honor, he was not.
Is there any other information that the state is offering to support their request for reconsideration of the bond, Ms. Pierce?
Not at this time, Your Honor. I think I've covered everything.
All right, Mr. Pate, on behalf of your client, what would your response be to the state's presentation to the court?
Your Honor, my response is that the motion should be denied. This may come out the wrong way, and I don't intend it to come out the wrong way, but whatever events took place on October 8th are the events that took place. Those haven't changed. The only thing that's changed, unfortunately, is the outcome. And if it's alleged that Mr. McCoy struck this individual in the head with his fist, then that is what is alleged. So the state can't come in here and say that it's a community safety interest that has changed, because whatever occurred at that time is what has occurred.
And the court should ignore any possibility that he might do this again?
Well, I think that's a possibility that would have been considered at the time Judge Satterfield set the bond. There's not been any evidence presented since that time that would make it any more or less likely that he would commit any other crime. The only thing that's changed, Your Honor, is the outcome. Mr. McCoy does have community ties in El Dorado. He reported to me when I spoke with him last week that he had been working. I didn't write down the name of his employer, but I believe he got terminated from that job as a result of obtaining these charges. He is on electronic monitoring. So if there is any concern at all about him not appearing, I think that should be kind of mitigated by the fact that he's going to be on EMD, and we're not asking that to be removed. Mr. McCoy has been in contact with this office. Mr. McCoy has not missed an appearance on this case. He's appeared as ordered by the court at the courthouse, understanding that there's a possibility the court may increase his bond and take him into custody. And despite that, he has presented himself to the court as ordered. As I said, he's been in good contact with me. I should have no problem staying in contact with him as we work through this case. He is 23 years old. As I understand it, the only criminal history is a felony drug possession. I think there may have been a misdemeanor battery as a juvenile. So he's not up at the high end of the grid. I can't comment on any allegations by the state that he's violated no contact order of the bond, and the state's had this case for 40 days. I've had discovery since Friday, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage there. I do believe there's an endorsed witness that is Mr. McCoy's fiance. I don't recall her name off the top of my head. I think he would like to be able to have contact with that individual, but I've not had time to formally file a motion for that. So for those reasons, we think the bond is appropriate where it is, Your Honor. I recognize these are very, very serious charges, but the acts that occurred, or those haven't changed since the time Judge Satterfield set the $50,000 bond.
Thank you, Mr. Pate. Do you have any reply argument to make here, Ms. Pierce?
Well, Judge, I think the facts might not have changed in that there was an unprovoked attack, but the result very definitely changed. He did pass away, and as a result, Mr. McCoy is now charged with first-degree murder.
Very well, Ms. Pierce. Court will consider certain factors in making this redetermination of bond in this case. Court first considering the nature and circumstances of the crime, it does appear that this is a crime of alleged violence against another individual, which certainly seems to be somewhat random in nature. According to the state, evidence will show that it was unprovoked, which obviously gives the court a great deal of concern. It does appear that the weight of the evidence against this defendant appears to be strong. There's apparently both eyewitness and video evidence to be presented in this case that would appear to implicate this defendant in this incident. I will note that Mr. McCoy is in the United States lawfully, that he does have some local ties. However, he isn't currently employed, which is a factor that weighs against him. He does have a felony conviction record based on what's been presented here today, including some indication that he has previously failed to appear in court when scheduled to do so. Again, certainly factors which weigh against this defendant. It does also, the court would have a concern about his likelihood to recommit crimes in the community if indeed the facts are as Ms. Pierce alleges, that he would be a danger to the community at large. The court, having considered a number of factors in this case, does find that there is a significant, in fact, dramatic difference in the possible penalties that this defendant faces from when he appeared before Judge Satterfield at first appearance. At that time, there was merely an aggravated battery charge, serious enough in and of itself, but it was punishable by a maximum of 43 months in prison and as little as 38 months in prison. Should this defendant be convicted of the current first-degree murder charge, he's potentially facing a life sentence, which is such a significant difference that this court is inclined to reconsider bond in this case and set a higher bond under the murder circumstances of this case. The court will increase bond in this case to the amount of $500,000, cash or professional surety required. Court finding that that significant amount of bond would be necessary to secure his appearance and to ensure that any bondsman that's on the hook for that bond would use any and all efforts to go nationally, internationally, if necessary, to reacquire this defendant should he flee or attempt to flee. Court will be placing upon this defendant a GPS monitoring requirement. He's to have no contact with the family members of the decedent or any other endorsed witness as previously ordered. I'm essentially not changing the no contact restrictions that were originally entered, but making sure that it includes any family members of the alleged decedent. I'm going to order Ashton McCoy taken into custody by the representatives of the Butler County Sheriff's Office there at the Judicial Center, unless that bond is posted with the conditions which the court has outlined here today. Ms. Pierce, if you'll draft an appropriate order which documents proceedings in this court here today.
I will do so, Your Honor.
Their hearing date. Lighter of vaping packs, cigarettes in my front right.
Mr. Payne, is there anything further the court needs to address at this time before Mr. McCoy is taken off screen?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you for your appearance here today on short notice, Mr. Payne.
Your Honor.
Yes,
Can I please say something?
you may.
I have a 3-month-old son with my fiance. That's the only reason I want the no contact order dropped. I'm fine with going to jail today and possibly not making bond, but I want to be able to have video visits with my son at least. That's
How
the
about
only
existing
reason I
orders
wanted the
interfere
no
with that?
contact order dropped, so I could see my son.
Your Honor, the fiance, I believe, is an endorsed witness.
Was she an eyewitness to this incident?
Yes, Your Honor. She was with him before, during, and after.
And
Well,
Your
I
Honor,
understand the state's concern about her being an eyewitness and perhaps her eventual testimony being influenced. Nevertheless, I'm not necessarily intending to preclude Mr. McCoy from visits from family members. Exactly what are you contemplating here, Mr. McCoy? Video visits? What do you mean?
Well, while I'm incarcerated, I can do visits, and I just want to be able to see my son. That's all I want. I'm fine with going to jail. I'm fine with whatever sentence the state gives me in the end of this. I just want to be able to see my son and my fiance. That is all I
I'm
want.
not necessarily ordering the sheriff to accommodate any type of video visits with your small son. Nevertheless, I'm not going to preclude it either, as long as this case isn't discussed at these video events that you're contemplating.
That's
I
fine.
don't intend to keep you from being able to see your son, Mr. McCoy, but this is one of the implications of alleged criminal behavior. Nevertheless, if the jail is willing to accommodate it, the court isn't going to preclude it. But again, this case is not to be discussed in any way. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right. And that's something that I believe that the jail could monitor. So the court
That's all
will
I
relax
wanted
the no
was
contact
the no
restriction
contact order.
with the fiance and apparently the mother of the child in this case for that limited purpose and that limited purpose only. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. If there's nothing further then, the Ashton Jay McCoy matter will currently be in recess, and we'll move on to another matter on
A Butler County family is speaking out after their loved one was killed in what police are calling an act of road rage. 74-year-old Alton Algrim died from his injuries after being attacked at an El Dorado convenience store this month. Police arrested Ashton McCoy. He was originally charged with aggravated battery, but following Algrim's death, he is now charged with first-degree murder. McCoy is now out on bond for his original charge of aggravated battery. Brandon Stitt talked with that family tonight. Brandon, what do they want to see happen?
Well, Rachel, the family wants to see Ashton McCoy back in jail for his charge of first-degree murder. But they also say that there was a woman with McCoy at the time that this happened, and she also needs held accountable.
Kent Algrim's nephew, everybody called him Kent. If you asked him who I was, he would tell you I was his second son.
Nick Algrim Rhodes was very close with his Uncle Kent. Getting calls from him didn't come as a surprise until the afternoon of October 8th.
He calls and he says, "Hey, I got attacked at the gas station." I said, "Attacked at the gas station?" He says, "Yeah, some punk kid screaming and hollering, and he hit me."
Nick says he went to the gas station where his Uncle Kent told him what happened.
Martha and Sue were coming over to get gas. They're out in the turn lane, and this kid pulls in behind them, starts screaming and honking and hollering. I start to walk over to him and tell him, "Hey, pal, there's no reason to talk that way."
Ashton Jay McCoy was arrested at the scene and later charged with aggravated battery. Kent went to the hospital to get checked out when things took a drastic turn. He underwent brain surgery, but his injuries were too severe.
Friday, we decided about 6 o'clock, after all the family had had a chance to come talk to him and the close friends, that we'd go ahead and remove the life support.
Kent died the next day.
He was a healthy man, and this kid killed him.
McCoy is now out on bond for his original charge of aggravated battery, but since Kent's death, he's been charged with first-degree murder. Kent's family wants to know why McCoy is not back behind bars.
Why is this kid walking the street? He was just released in February of this year from serving a prison sentence.
It's a question with no answer, at least for now.
What the family and these two ladies that were dear friends of my uncle need is for this man and woman to not be on the street.
As far as that woman, Nick tells me that she was a passenger in McCoy's vehicle at the time of the incident. I reached out to Butler County Attorney's Office today to try to get an update on the case, but I never heard back.